All right, welcome, 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 one and all. This is Impolite Company with your host Matthew Best. And if you are watching on the video, it looks a little bit different than normal. We had to do a little bit of change of plans just because of it's welcome to winter in Pennsylvania. And I'm looking out the window and it is nice and snowy. Got a couple of inches so far, but didn't want to risk being out there. So anyway, did a little different of the setup. That's why I don't have the flag behind me. If you're on the podcast, you don't notice anything different. Anyway, so let me do a brief intro here, and then we'll get started in. As usual, again, welcome to Impolite Company on the WGCBR .live network. There's lots of great shows. You should check them out on www.gcpr.live. And on this show, it's where we defy the old adage of diving headfirst into religion and politics. You know the old saying, you're not supposed to talk about religion and politics in polite company. Well, this is what we talk about. So clearly we must be impolite. And I'm your host, Matthew Best, here to walk with you in honest dialogue and showcase the power of seeing the humanity of people with different perspectives. So you can send me your questions, comments, all that to contactimpolitecompany@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to converse with you on a variety of different things. You can also find previous episodes and sign up to listen to new episodes through popular podcast channels like iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, all that kind of great stuff. Just search for Impolite Company, and you'll see us. It's the logo that's got the microphone right in the middle of it. You can dive further into topics. I have a blog, pastormatthewbest.com. You can check out all the things that I write about, usually again around religion and politics. And if you enjoy what we're doing here, you can support the show. buymeacoffee.com/impolite company. And before we get into today's content and episode, I just want to take a moment to highlight a couple of things. One is you can show some love to Christ Lutheran Church in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in the heart of Allison Hill. It's a church that I am called to serve as pastor. It's a unique church, very interesting. And what makes us so special is that we are a community of healing. And there are 3 free health clinics that serve so many people. And since 2018, there have been over 100,000 visits. So if you want to support the mission of offering healing through those clinics, you can go to christharrisburg.org/donate. You go to christharrisburg.org, you can check out what those clinics are. There's a nurse-run medical outreach clinic, there's a dental clinic, and then also a nurse-run third clinic that we call Healthy on the Hill, which is working with people who have more chronic conditions. Lots of interesting stuff going on there. Care about homelessness, you can check out memorialblanket.org. We just did the Memorial Blanket Project in December, and that was in Philadelphia. And maybe I'll tell you a little bit more about how that went. But each year people make blankets for strangers, and we make an art installation to highlight homelessness and then give them away all at the end of the night. And we've done this in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, on the front lawn of the U.S. Capitol, on the steps of the Pennsylvania Capitol, and now in front of the Liberty Bell this past December. So you can go to memorialblanket.org. And lastly, if you're looking for a tool to help with conversations on the difficult topic of gun violence, I want to recommend a book that I'm the originator of the idea, one of the authors. It's called American Roulette. It is a piece of fiction about a mass shooting. It's a mystery, murder mystery as well. It's a unique, creative writing piece in which there are 10 contributors, and we follow the story of 8 people's lives over the course of one day, ending with a mass shooting. And the point of it is to focus on the humanity. You don't offer answers, because I think as soon as you start offering answers, you just shut down the conversation. So we want to have a tool for people to be able to talk about gun violence in a way that is approachable. It's often what fiction allows people to do, is approach difficult things. So you can find all the links. You can send me an email. Again, contact impolitecompany@gmail.com, and you'll be able to find all the wonderful information. So I want to highlight a few things. There's a lot going on right now. I do not have a guest with me today. Maybe that seems fitting given the weather conditions and everything else. But anyway, I'm writing down something. Hang on. All right. Can't do two things at once. You know, that's just, sometimes that's difficult. Anyway, there's a lot going on. It is January 19th at a little bit after 2 o'clock. And I got a few things rolling through my head. And so I want to just kind of, this is the look inside the head of Matthew Best, which could be really scary. Anyway, I want to talk about a few things. I want to talk about Martin Luther King Jr. Day tomorrow. I want to talk about the inauguration. Maybe we'll get a little bit into TikTok, whether it's banned or not banned or whatever. Tell you a little bit about how the Memorial Blanket project went. Some of those type of things. We got less than an hour, so lots of stuff. Buckle up. So let's start off with Martin Luther King Jr. This is, I find it interesting. It just kind of worked out this way, calendar, that we have, of course, tomorrow is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and as well, it is Inauguration Day. I find that kind of ironic, given, you know, and it's just how the calendar worked, right? I mean, there's nothing, I'm not suggesting any type of conspiracy theory or anything like that. I just find it interesting that you have Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Inauguration Day on the same day. It's not the first time that's happened. It won't be the last time. What's interesting, though, is the contrast. So, and it would have been very different, right, if Kamala had won, and still it would have been on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Almost the fulfillment of what King was talking about. Now we have this contrast between these two men who could not be further apart from each other in so many different ways. Martin Luther King Jr., the thing that I like to highlight about him, and I know that what gets used so much is the I have a dream speech, and a portion of that. There are folks who don't agree with what he was about that still use portions of that speech for whatever they want to do with that. I think there's a couple of things that are to really kind of highlight that I think still have an impact today and should have an impact today. One is the letters from a jail, from Birmingham jail. If you have not read that, I highly recommend it. It is, you know, it is one of the pieces that I think when you read it, it just highlights so many different things. Talking about you know, the white pastors who are not helping out or telling the, you know, folks to wait or anything like that. There's so much in there. The other piece that I wanted to mention was his highlight of the beloved community, and this concept that he has, I think, still has a lot of resonance for today, given what may or may not happen, whatever the case may be. The idea of the beloved community is really important. It has to do with justice. It has to do with forgiveness. It has to do with nonviolence, the way of peace. All these, brotherhood is what he would have talked about. All of this is about being community together in a way that is expansive. To be able to see that when I'm hurting, other people see that. When I see other people hurting, it also hurts me. There's this sense of community in there, and and so this is something that's really really important for us to be able to really kind of highlight on that. I'm really excited because one of our other hosts is jumping on here. I can see Jeff Kennedy, and here he is. Jeff, welcome. Thank you very much. Well, I appreciate it. And I hear you, right? Yeah, looking out the window, it's snowing pretty good out there, and it's finally starting to lay. And as I was mentioning at the beginning, this is a little bit of a different setup than I usually have. Normally, I'm in my office and I have the flag behind me that has my logo. Not happening today. I needed to make sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah. Well, I don't know. There's something going on with my throat a little bit today. So, anyway, yeah. Oh, well, because probably the bass. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, I can hear that a little bit too. Yeah. Yeah. Right. 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 So, Jeff, maybe you could say a little bit about your show for the folks who are listening to this show, either now or later into the future. Jeff, tell us a little bit about what you do and what what your show is about. Yes. Right. That's okay. Right. Right. Yeah. There you go. Right. 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 Yep. Yep. Oof. Yeah. Right. Right. Yep. Yep. Right. So Jeff, with that, I had mentioned that I wanted to talk about the I don't know what you want to call it, the irony, the conflict of MLK Day tomorrow and inauguration. To me, it could have been very different, obviously, right? If Kamala, almost would have been this kind of like the right, and now you have this kind of conflict that's going on of MLK and what he stood for. I was just before you got on, I was just talking about his idea of the beloved community, this sense of brotherhood, and where when one person is suffering, we all suffer, and kind of that sense of for him the importance of nonviolence and reconciliation and right relationship and all those type of things. And then you have this inauguration um, of a man who, let's just say, is very different than MLK in numerous ways. We could probably spend the whole hour just naming the differences, but that's not fun. Right? But yeah, right. Yeah, 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 wow, right. Uh huh. Mm-hmm. 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 Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Right. 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 Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. 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 Yeah. Right. Right. Didn't care. Right. Uh-huh. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right. 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 It was 100 years old. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Hmm. That's all right. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's right. It's been going on for a long time. Right. Oh yeah. Hmm. Yeah. 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 Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we also, yeah, that I get that. I want to acknowledge that Lauren Larkin has entered the room. There, well, there she is. Lauren, you're on mute. If you could, there you are. Uh huh. That's all right. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. Okay. That's a, don't worry. Well, I wouldn't be a good pastor if I didn't offer forgiveness. Yes. Right. Radical grace has to be a thing, especially for guests coming onto the show. That's just how it works. So, um, uh, okay. All right. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for coming in. There we go. Good stuff. All right. All right. Thanks, Jeff. All right. So, Lauren, thank you for being here. I'm going to do the quick introduction, and then we'll we'll dive in. We've been talking about Martin Luther King Jr. Day and inauguration, and kind of the contrast of what that looks like, and all that. That's what we were talking about, just because the timing is just, and this is why I'm so glad you were able to come on, because I think it fits in so well. So let me do the introduction to officially introduce you into the show. So this is the Reverend Dr. Lauren R.E. Larkin, and she is currently the rectrix of the Episcopal Church of the Nativity. In June 2024, she graduated from the University of Aberdeen in Scotland with a PhD in systematic theology and political ethics. Her dissertation, Leaving Heaven Behind, Paradoxical Identity, as the author of Dorothy, hopefully I don't mess up her last name, is it Soleil? Okay, Sola. Theology of Political Resistance focuses on cultivating and demonstrating that socio-political resistance on behalf of the Christian believer's neighbor is definitely a part of good Christian practice in the world to the glory of God. She reads and writes on Dorothy Sola and Martin Luther, and truly enjoys teaching wherever she gets a chance. And she also believes that our encounter with God in the event of faith is one that makes us advocates for the neighbor in the world as Christ was an advocate during his time on behalf of those who were marginalized and oppressed. Thanks so much for being here, Lauren. Appreciate you coming. That's okay. Don't worry about it. So, why don't you tell us a little bit to kind of get started? Tell us about this wonderful person that you have are an expert on. Tell us about her and why she is important today. Okay. Sure. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and this is exactly where I think the tie-in is. You know, like when I hear you talking about care for the neighbor, I'm like, oh, that's Martin Luther King Jr.'s version of the beloved community. um, and and it's so interesting that all these contemporaries are talking about the same thing in just different ways, but they're all pulling on the same thread, right? They're seeing the world for what it is. They're not in, fantasy world. They're seeing the world for what it is, and then saying, however, it doesn't have to be like this, and that we need, and it's not like complex stuff. It's, hey, you ought to care about you ought to care about your neighbor, because when you right because this is what it means, for Christians, since we all bear the image of God. This is a way that we are caring about God in that way, because we're all carrying that. So, you had mentioned when we had talked previously about the false dichotomy between religion and politics. I know that sounds like really controversial for folks. Maybe not folks who are listening to my show because I talk about religion and politics, but if you could talk just briefly about what do you mean by this false dichotomy of religion and politics? Right. Yeah. Right. 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 Yep. Yep. Right. Mm. Yep. Right. Oh, it is absolutely. Hmm. Yep. Right. 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 Well, and I have found that a few things. One is that people have this misunderstanding of what politics and partisanship are. Like you had mentioned, I have talked about that a ton of times. That politics is more than just partisanship, like the way that you've said. Right, partisanship is member of a party, and parties exist to get people elected to raise money, that type of thing, right? But politics, I mean, if you go back to the root of the Greek of 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 politics, it means how essentially how is a city state going to function? How are you going to make decisions? I mean, it's extremely just everyone can participate is the how are people participating is what politics is about, right? And I've found that when I have preached on something and it's something that somebody doesn't like, I'll get this criticism. Oh, you're just being political, as a way to shut it down, so that we can't talk about it anymore. It's used as a weapon, and that I'm like, no, you're thinking partisan, and and I'm thinking political because and you know this very well. Like everything about Jesus, go from his birth to his death, there are titles. They are political titles associated that the scripture writers used on purpose and that Pilate used on purpose to name Jesus. And there's a political element of this, right? And it's all through the Old Testament. It's all sorts of stuff in there. And this notion, I think part of this too is this kind of misunderstanding of what does the separation of church and state mean, right? To me, when I read this, it's the idea that the institution will not dictate what the laws of the land are. And I don't know if you saw this. There was a speaker, I reposted it, who was an African American gentleman. I don't know who he was, but I was captivated by what he was talking about. He said, "Here's my problem with Christian nationalism: is which version of Christianity are you talking about?" And then he went through this whole litany of, are you talking about Bull Connor, who would teach Sunday school and then go out and do what he was doing? Are you talking about the slaveholders? Are you talking about X, Y, and Z, all the way down through? And I'm like, yeah, that's a perfect. Why is no one complaining about the politics of that? Uh, so I'm also reminding, and I'm sure you've probably heard this quote. William Barber II has been quoted as saying, "Preachers don't get to stay out of politics. We are either chaplains of empire or prophets of God." To me, when you're talking about what you were just talking about, I'm like, oh, I can hear that resonating in what he is talking about. Which, let's keep talking about this. You have mentioned preaching is political, which makes sense based on what you said. Tell me a little bit more, because people are going to say, well, isn't that just like coming from God and all this type of stuff, and where's the line and all that? What are your thoughts on that? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. 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 Mm. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Oh yeah. Yep. Yep. Right. Right. Oh gosh. Oof. Ouch. Yeah. Uh. Yeah. 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 Right. 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 Well, well, right. Well, so we use the narrative lectionary, which I have the benefit of. There's only one reading, so it makes it a little bit simpler, right? The reading for today, just ironically, is Luke 4:14 to 30, which is Jesus goes to his hometown. He opens up Isaiah 61, which is extremely like, you want to talk about a political statement. And then they're like, oh wow, he's a genius, and then he's saying, by the way, it's not just for you, it's all these foreigners as well. And then it says they go into this rage. They're not upset and walk out. No, they're in rage to the point that they create essentially a lynch mob, and they take him to the edge of the town, and they're going to throw him off the cliff. They're going to kill him. Right? So I'm like, if that's not political, I don't know what is. And the irony of that reading being, the calendar is just kind of, the calendar is what it is. The narrative doesn't worry about the calendar and all of that. But that reading being the day before MLK Day and his history and inauguration, and I'm like, wow, we talked about that, and I'm in a setting that is, obviously white straight guy, pretty run of the mill, in a setting that is very diverse, which is economically diverse, racially diverse, sexuality diverse, all sorts of different ways, and so there's a lot of folks who just have a lot of concern going into and it's real, and so that's what we talked about, and was it political? I think it's political just because, like you're talking about, of the people that are there, these are the concerns they have, and the gospel was speaking into that. And from the quote that Jesus has from Isaiah 61 through, hey, he didn't try to convince them of anything. They were going to do what they were going to do, and he walked in the midst of it anyway. Um, you know, it was just, I just had to share that a little bit because I was, Right. So, well, let me ask you this question because I think that a lot of this then is this an American thing? Because so I spent a year in Finland during seminary, and what struck me was getting out of the culture, American culture, stepping away from it and being able to look at it from the outside. The biggest thing I noticed was this dichotomy of either or for everything. Whereas, like in Finland, that's just not the thing. And they have a bigger sense of communal identity and on all of that, right? There's certainly individualism, but it's kind of offset. So, do you think this is more of an American phenomenon, or is it just a human? I'm sure it's a combination of. Right? I'm looking at me. I'm sounding almost like I'm making a dichotomy, asking about dichotomies. Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's I do that a lot too. It's all right. Uh huh. That's okay. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. Big time. Right. Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Mm-hmm.